Hello everyone to our third annual Book Expo, and it's obvious that this is December 2020 because we're in the midst still of this horrific pandemic. But I want to share with you, I have my hat on straight? Yeah, okay. I want to share with you the books that we've added to the Garrett Library this year. And what better way to survive all this quarantine and all this staying at home but to grab a good book. So I suggest there are many, many good books in here, and you might want to think about that for gift giving for your friends, family, and be good to yourself. Buy one for yourself. So in no particular order, let's just see what we have in the box. So let's see. First up, Spirits, Gods, and Magic, an introduction to the anthropology of the supernatural. It's written by Dr. Jack Hunter, who's one of the PF's research fellows. And it has a foreword by Dr. Fiona Bowie and an afterword by Dr. David Luke, also grantees of the foundation. And Spirits, Gods, and Magic, taken from the back, is an introduction to the anthropology of the supernatural. It has introductory chapters outlining key anthropological perspectives on shamanism and spirit possession, witchcraft and magic, and ghosts, spirits, and gods. And there's also chapters exploring the relationship between ethnography and the paranormal and what the fields of anthropology and parapsychology can learn from each other. And that's a personal favorite of mine, anthropology. God, there are a lot of books. We have Sensitive Soul, The Unseen Role of Emotion in Extraordinary States by Micheal A. Jar, with a foreword by Christine Simmons Moore, who's a good friend of the foundation. It says, drawing on a range of scientific studies, Jar explores how 5 remarkable kinds of people, individuals with autism, synesthesia, savantism, child prodigies, and children who remember past lives, are linked through the biology of emotion, and how a hidden emotional intensity underlies both autism and anomalous perception. He examines the psychological concept of thin and thick boundaries, and how those with thin boundaries, those who are more environmentally sensitive, have a greater predisposition toward empathy, synesthesia, psi abilities, and extraordinary states of perception. Sharing extraordinary examples, the author explores how strong emotion may endure through time and space, possibly even after death. He also looks at the emotional lives of animals, our soulful connections with them, and how life-threatening emergencies can trigger amazing sensitivities and abilities in our fellow creatures. Well, by Dr. Alejandro Parra, our good friend in Argentina, The Last Farewell Embrace, Spirituality, Near-Death Experiences, and Other Extraordinary Events Among Nurses. And boy, unfortunately, in these times, God knows what these nurses are going through. But the author summarizes the conclusions of dozens of unexplained experiences, such as visions people have reported when they're about to die, near-death experiences, and patients who have recovered suddenly and completely from illness after a religious intervention. Nurses have also often had their own experiences in the hospital context, such as seeing apparitions, noting significant coincidences, seeing energy fields, lights, or electric shocks around, or even emitted from a hospitalized patient. Other such experiences include observing anomalous behavior in animals, noticing the anomalous functioning of equipment or medical instruments, intuitively knowing the nature of a patient's illness or when he or she will die, and having unexpected experiences in intensive care units, neonatology areas, or pediatric or neuropsychiatric services. So Dr. Parra is a psychologist from the Universidad Abierta Interamericana, where he teaches psychology, and he's an associate researcher. He's a past president of the PA, and as I stated before, a really good friend to the PF. Well, now we have by Dr. Thomas Rabeyron, in French for our French-speaking public, Clinique des expériences exceptionnelles. And I'm not going to try out my broken French, but it is a wonderful book, and I hope it's going to be translated into English. He's going to be talking about the experiences that sometimes are considered to be paranormal, anomalistic, or exceptional. So he's a professor of psychology and psychopathology at the University de Lorraine in Nancy, and the director of the Laboratoire Interpsy and an honorary research fellow at the University of Edinburgh in the Kersler unit. So let's read that, practice our French, and hope for an English translation. Here we have the Enfield Poltergeist Tapes. There's a lot of questions about the Enfield tapes. Of course, movies and shows. I know people are always asking me because it is one of the most disturbing cases in history, but let's figure out what really happened. It's by Dr. Melvyn Willin. And in the back it says, if you want to read a biased account of the famous Enfield Poltergeist case, don't buy this book. I don't mind whether you have a wide open mind or a totally closed one, since I shall not be trying to convince you of one way or the other, but do buy this book if you want to know what really happened, which I think so many people do. So that is, it is one of the best known cases of its kind. It was very dramatic, human interest, TV shows. So I think to get to the bottom of the reality of the phenomena that was experienced would be very, very helpful. So I know my son will personally be digging into this one. This is the second edition of Psy Wars by Craig Weiler, with a foreword by another good friend of the foundation, Dr. Callum Cooper. With TED and the YouTube thing, the global media platform took down scientist Rupert Sheldrake's lecture, The Science Delusion, deeming it not scientific, and it ignited a fierce discussion around the globe. Bloggers, commentators, distinguished scientists, internet trolls, and even a Nobel Prize winning physicist all contributed to this once-in-a-lifetime debate. The subject, the most controversial question of all time: what is the nature of reality? So in Psy Wars, TED, Wikipedia, and the battle for the internet, Craig Weiler in journalistic fashion demonstrates how science, the accepted arbiter of truth, is constantly being manipulated and propagandized in an effort to uphold prejudices and beliefs in the scientific community. So, as Cal said, who wrote the foreword, oh, and by the way, this is J.P. Morgan, so I guess he is. Are you interested in these books too? Okay, well, get out of my frame. I work alone. Anyway, Craig Weiler has compiled a compelling case, so says Cal, which delivers the evidence and certainly makes no apologies. The more people are aware of the controversies, the easier the fight will become for fair and balanced science communication. Psy Wars is certainly not fruitless. This book bears many fruits. So I think this is something that we should all be considering. Well, let's see. This heavy tome is Ehler Voss's edited book entitled Mediality on Trial, Testing and Contesting Trance and Other Media Techniques. So this is quite a academic work, presuming a division between distinctly opposed categories of religion and the secular. After 1900, technical media tend to be associated with the secular, and human, trance mediums, tend to be associated with religion. By addressing past and present controversies connected to testing the capacities and potentials of mediums, this volume examines the way in which the term medium marks an overlapping of, and thus problematizes, the division between religion and the secular, the personal and the technological. Very interesting. Let's see, what do we... Oh, a novel! Near Death, a Raney Daye investigation, written in part by our friend Loyd Auerbach, well known to many, Rich Hosek, and Arnold Rudnick. And Near Death introduces, as again it's a novel, introduces parapsychologist Dr. Jennifer Daye and police detective Nate Raney in a ghostly mystery. When Nate is shot during a high-stakes robbery, he awakens from the ordeal, during which he was clinically dead, with the information he needs to track down the men who shot him. So this is a whodunit with a paranormal twist, but from people who really know the reality of the paranormal. So this might be really, really good. And if Loyd has anything to do with it, it is. Let's see, what's this? Contact with the Future, The Nature of Extrasensory Perception by John Taylor. John Taylor graduated from the University of Cambridge with an MA in Natural Sciences. He had an early career in marketing, followed by consultancy work in the petroleum industry. The last 25 years, however, has been dedicated to a full-time investigation of ESP. He's a member of the PA. Apparently, almost a century of research has produced outstanding evidence for extrasensory perception, yet many people remain skeptical, I'll say, and thus is largely due to the absence of a generally accepted theory. John Taylor has carried out a careful examination of the case histories and laboratory experiments. He concludes that in precognition we connect with our future experience of an event. The precognition is due to a transfer of information from the brain in the future to the brain in the present, just as telepathy is due to a transfer between different brains. Taylor rejects the clairvoyance interpretation, direct connection with the event, and suggests that acceptance of this interpretation by a majority of parapsychologists has led to an important misunderstanding about the nature of ESP. Well, I suggest that this might be fighting words for some, but apparently he goes to explain the transfer of information through space and time, applying the theory of relativity along with David Bohm's interpretation of quantum mechanics. So this is not for the faint-hearted, but I think talking about intuition, this whole thing, we welcome more contemplation of the phenomena, and therefore contact with the future sounds like a good deal. This is a book entitled, well, obviously it's a book, and I haven't even had a drink, but you know what? I'm going to have a little sip to wet my whistle. This is Ghosts, A Natural History, 500 Years of Searching for Proof by Roger Clarke. And what do you call it? Let's see, from the back, is there anybody out there? That's a question. No matter how rationally we order our lives, few of us are completely immune to the suggestion of the uncanny and the fear of the dark. That's why I sleep with a nightlight, but of course, as the granddaughter of Eileen Garrett, who could blame me? But what explains sightings of ghosts? Why do they fascinate us? What exactly do those who've been haunted see? What did they believe, and what proof is there? Taking us through the key hauntings that have obsessed the world, from the true events that inspired Henry James' classic The Turn of the Screw, right up to present day, Roger Clarke unfolds a story of class conflict, charlatans, and true believers. The cast list includes British royalty and prime ministers, U.S. presidents, Samuel Johnson, Harry Houdini, Benjamin Franklin. The chapters cover everything from religious beliefs to modern developments in neuroscience, the medicine of ghosts, and the technology of ghost hunting. So that is quite an effort, and I really like this book, and not because Garrett is briefly mentioned, with, of course, adding, when you're talking about different cases, her famous R101, the crash of the dirigible, that she is perhaps best remembered for. So, Ghosts, A Natural History. Oh, this weighs a ton. Oh my goodness. This is volume 4 of the continuing anthology, The Stargate Archives. This one is, of course, the other 3 volumes are on the shelves of the Garrett. This is volume 4, Operational Remote Viewing, Memorandums, and Reports. Reports of the United States government-sponsored PSI program that we all have heard about. And again, there are so many misconceptions. So this is compiled and edited by the guy who was really there, Edward C. May, and Sonali Mawa, with a foreword by William S. Cohen. So Stargate, for those who aren't aware, although I don't think there's too many left who wouldn't be, Stargate was the largest funded program in the history of psi research, receiving about $19.9 million in funding from 72 to 95. Researchers from SRI International and later at Science Applications International Corporation, in association with various U.S. intelligence agencies, participated in this program. Using the remote viewing method, that's why this is, dedicated to the remote viewing method. Research focused on understanding the applicability and nature of psi in general, but mostly upon informational psi. Volume 1, remote viewing, and Volume 2 include all respects of RV, including laboratory trials and several operational results. Volume 4, the Operational Remote Viewing Government Memorandums. This particular book includes an analysis of the applied remote viewing program and a selection of documents that provide a narrative on the behind-the-scenes activities of Stargate. So Dr. May is a leading figure in anomalous cognition research and has authored more than 500 research and technical papers. He was with the U.S. government's Psi research program, Stargate, as mentioned, and was the research director from 85 to 95 of it at SRI National and International and SAIC. And he's currently the president of the Laboratories for Fundamental Research in Palo Alto, California, and again, a dear friend of the foundation. Sonali Bhatmawaha is a PhD in psychology, a research associate with his Laboratories for Fundamental Research. Her interests include a synthesis of the cognitive sciences and anomalous cognition research, which can lead to theoretical developments in the field. So that'll help get you through the quarantine. Dangerous Pursuits, Mediumship, Minds, and Music by Dr. Stephen Braude. And Steve is very well known to the field. He's an emeritus professor and former chair of philosophy at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, and he serves now as the editor-in-chief of the Journal of Scientific Exploration. He's the recipient of numerous grants, some from PF too, fellowships and awards, including research fellowships from the National Endowment for the Humanities and the Bial Foundation in Portugal, and several others. He's published 6 other fascinating books and more than 100 book chapters and essays in philosophical and scientific journals. Dangerous Pursuits, this particular one, is a wry allusion to philosopher Stephen Braude's obstacle-strewn career path over the past several decades, to the vindictive hostility, ridicule, and condescension he's encountered, don't we all, for his decision to look carefully at the data and theoretical issues of parapsychology. The diverse chapters, which are incisive but not without humor, focus on the topic of mediumship and in the process address major parapsychological themes, including the evidence for post-mortem survival and the unsettling question of the limits of paranormal influence. In the end, it turns out the real danger is in the widespread ignorance of how these issues impact our understanding of reality. And Stephen is just the guy to, show us the error of our ways. Let's see now. Rethinking Consciousness, edited by John H. Buchanan and Christopher M. Anstews, with a foreword by Dr. Stanley Krippner. Let's see. Stan, taken from the foreword that he wrote for this book, says that this book proposes an ecological civilization, one that reflects the impending climate changes of the 21st century. In recent years, there's been a plethora of books and articles on this topic. What is new about this volume is its link to exceptional human experiences, especially those anomalies that cannot be easily reconciled with mainstream science's understanding of time, space, and energy. The extraordinary suggestion of the chapter authors is that the concepts and data from transpersonal psychology and parapsychology, long rejected, ridiculed, or ignored by mainstream science, are the very resources needed to reorient this endangered world and its tattered societies. So I think we'd better hurry up and look at this, because our world is certainly not spinning around too well. People who have contributed, some of the names, John Palmer, James Carpenter, Buchanan, Stan Groff, Leonard Gibson, Robert McDermott, John Cobb, Christopher Anastus, and Larry Dossey. So let's all take a look at that one. And you'll forgive me because do you hear noise going on? My cat is now chewing on something. You know, don't you supposed to take a nap? And there's another one floating around, so I hope that she won't also, what do you call it, make an appearance. Researching the paranormal. How to find reliable information about parapsychology, ghosts, astrology, cryptozoology, near-death experiences, and more. As if that wasn't enough. By Courtney M. Block. In Researching the Paranormal, Courtney M. Block provides an overview of paranormal research and introduces readers to an assortment of resources that seriously examine various paranormal topics. She shows readers how to think critically about paranormal sources. Yeah, let's please. Critical thinking is a must. Critically about about paranormal sources and how to apply the components of credibility when conducting their own paranormal investigations and research. Highlighting the long history of serious academic inquiry into various paranormal topics, Block provides citations to primary source documents, journal articles, databases, encyclopedias, dictionaries, books, and more. And in addition, she provides a historical overview of various paranormal topics such as parapsychology, cryptozoology, ufology, divination, ghosts, hauntings, and more. Apparently, she's a reference, instruction, and user engagement librarian at the Indiana University Southeast. She's a member of the Institute for the Study of Religious and Anomalous Experience, and throughout her various roles in libraries, has helped many people locate and research information about the paranormal. I bet she'd love the Garrett Library. Would you believe we still have some more down there? Oh my goodness. Almost finished, guys. Here we have a short history, or nearly, everything paranormal. Our Secret Powers, Telepathy, Clairvoyance, and Precognition by, and I'm going to kill the name, Terje G. Simonson. So forgive me. I hope the author will forgive me if I really messed that up. My Norwegian is not good, to say the least. It says, enter the twilight zone of human consciousness. As Dean Radin says, it's an encyclopedic introduction to the psychic side of the fascinating but puzzling domain known as the paranormal. There is no better choice. Well, that's a compliment from Dean Radin, of the chief scientist at the Institute of Noetic Sciences. Apparently, he is a Norwegian writer and historian of ideas whose primary interest is the esoteric traditions, Hermeticism, occultism, mysticism, and the paranormal. And, I also made a note because he too has included Mrs. G. I love it when my grandmother makes the cut. But again, this is just a brief mention, but a short history. She fits within that, and I think this would be a very useful reference book. The author, Doug Muha, who I don't personally know, was very kind to send me a complimentary copy for the library of There Is More to You Than You Know. 9 Overlooked Truths for the 21st Century from a Prophet in the 20th, which is, well, I'll read from the back. Who am I? What is the meaning of life? Well, do we have a soul? These are important questions that Western psychology generally ignores, but have been answered through the ages by prophets like Edgar Cayce, major religions, and ancient wisdom. Although separated by time, geography, and language, there is an alignment in their message too. What can we learn from their wisdom? By examining Cayce's life and work, as well as other individuals, and yes, another commercial for Garrett. It seems that she seems to be having a resurgence lately, because he mentions her several times in this book. By examining Cayce's life and work, as well as other individuals whose talents are much more ignored than explained, There Is More to You Than You Know reveals a far deeper and richer picture of your true potential and will help you live your best life. There truly is more to you than you know. So, Dark Cognition by David Vernon, Evidence for Psi and Its Implications for Consciousness. Written by David Vernon, who is a senior lecturer in psychology at Canterbury Christ Church University. His research interests include a wide range of anomalous phenomena and the implications they have for models and theories of consciousness. His research also encompasses techniques used to enhance human performance and creative problem solving. Let's see, Dr. Ehler, who also served as the Parapsychological Association president, he says that dark cognition brings together some of the main research areas within the field of parapsychology. The book covers an interesting range of topics addressing many issues with a seriousness and clarity that makes them accessible to the non-specialist. David Vernon makes a good job of showing how important these findings are for any theory of consciousness. The back of the book continues saying, outlining the scientific evidence behind psi research, dark cognition expertly reveals that such anomalous phenomena clearly exist, highlighting that the prevailing view of consciousness purely as a phenomenon of the brain fails to account for the empirical findings. He provides essential coverage of information and evidence for a variety of anomalous psi phenomena, calling for a paradigm shift in how we view consciousness, from seeing it as something solely reliant on the brain to something that is enigmatic, fundamental, and all-pervasive. The book examines the nature of psi research, showing that, despite claims to the contrary, it is clearly a scientific endeavor. Here. It explores evidence from telepathy, clairvoyance and remote viewing, precognition, psychokinesis, fields of consciousness, energy healing, out-of-body experiences, near-death experiences, and post-death phenomena, showing that not only do these phenomena exist, but that they have significant implications for our understanding of consciousness. Let's see, two more. Very proud of this book. Dr. James Matlock, who is also one of the PF Research Fellows, has put together Signs of Reincarnation, Exploring Beliefs, Cases, and Theory, and there's a foreword by Jeffrey Micheal. James, as I mentioned, is a research fellow with PF. He's worked at the ASPR, which is the American Society for Psychical Research in New York, and the Rhine Research Center in Durham. He's published widely on reincarnation and related issues, and is co-authored with Erlander Haraldson of I Saw a Light and Came Here, Children's Experiences of Reincarnation. And mentioning Erlander, of course, just a few days ago, the field lost Erlander, and it is a big loss. He was really a gentleman, and I'm glad to think that he's figured out now all the answers to the questions that we've been posing. But back to James, he's contributed articles on reincarnation to the online Psi Encyclopedia, and he's been teaching his own classes. He holds also a PhD in anthropology from Southern Illinois University, Carbondale. And Ed Kelly, very well known, who's written many books, including Beyond Physicalism Toward Reconciliation of Science and Spirituality, says that this is an excellent introduction to the important but little known body of evidence for human rebirth. James G. Matlock relentlessly and properly confronts traditional beliefs, the behavior of would-be critics, and recent attempts to provide conceptual frameworks accommodating rebirth data, and major contribution. It's the first comprehensive look at the belief in reincarnation and the evidence for past lives from historical records, anthropological studies, and contemporary research. He discusses various ways the evidence may be interpreted and shows that although reincarnation entails a rejection of the materialist notion that consciousness is generated by the brain, It does not require the acceptance of any radically new concepts or the abandonment of well-established findings in mainstream psychology or biology. This book offers students, scholars, and anyone interested in the possibility of reincarnation an essential grounding in beliefs, cases, and theory, while opening doors for future research into the extension of consciousness beyond our present lives. Well, if you're still with me, because this has been a box full, here's our very last one, and it's a really good read. It's written by the best-selling author of The Suspicions of Mr. Witcher, Kate Summerscale. And basically, this book is the case The Haunting of Alma Fielding, a true ghost story. I was very proud to be able to assist Kate with opening up PF files, because Eileen Garrett was also involved somewhat in this case with Dr. Nandor Fodor, and I made the introduction for Kate to his daughter, Andrea Fodor, who I'm very fond of. So it's just out in England. I am told that it's going to be published in the States in early spring, I think, maybe even as February if I remember, but the old noggin isn't ticking over like it used to. People have said with her eye for period detail, her sensitivity to the quirks and poignancies of human motivation, and her brilliant storytelling, Summerscale has taken this corker of a case and made it as gripping as a novel, an engaging, unsettling, deeply satisfying read. Philippa Gregory, who writes historical tomes, has said that it's a page-turner with the authority of history, an unvarnished account of unknowable things at a time of deep unease. Great book. So guys, I think now I'm going to release you from my what do you call it, going on and on about the wonders of these books, but I think that you really should take a look at them and gift them. And if not that, see if we ever can break quarantine, if life goes back to normal, whether you can see them on the shelves of the Eileen Garrett Library. But at this time, I wish all my friends and colleagues and people watching this video a safe and healthy, holiday season, and the very best for 2021. So, happy holidays.